Great, so we're gonna start off our React Anderson content for this week. Do remember that when we're watching other people's content, it is super duper important and nice for us to go to their channel, to like and subscribe, so the content creator gets, you know, the notoriety and spreading through the algorithm and all that wonderful stuff that comes with posting a YouTube video. So make sure you do your due diligence. If you're here and the Twitch side of things, that'll be in the I just posted the link, but if you're on YouTube, it'll be down in the description below. Choy is a creator we've watched plenty of times, and we don't always see eye to eye on things. Usually their takes I am not particularly too much a fan of. A lot of it kind of, I feel like the homie is a little too doomer. Like, it feels like they try to kind of state certain things as being objective when it's just very, very dour instead. In terms of like their actual like fact-based videos, like the cheater stuff, when they're talking about like hacking and cheating, that stuff's super informative, super awesome, super great, and I love those videos so much. It's just like when it comes to like the doom and gloom about the game, it can be kind of a bummer really quickly, nor is it like particularly true. Last video we watched of theirs, they said that DBD was objectively like the most toxic community in gaming, which is just not true. Just not true at all. So it kind of, the doom and gloom kind of leads to some out there statements every once in a while, but we will see what they have to say today. Today they're talking about the removal of the DC penalty. So I know I have a very what's the word? I have a very unorthodox take when it comes to the DC penalty. I don't care. I don't care about DC penalties. I don't care about people DCing. It's just not something that bothers me. I don't feel like I'm a person that's entitled to other people's time. I try not to shame people who like, or like, I want DC penalty, whatever. I kind of draw the line where I get kind of upset where you're like, I want the DC penalty to be worse and I want people to be punished for leaving the game. Because yeah, there are people in Dead by Daylight that definitely DC from games because they're big babies and they don't like facing certain killers and all that. But you truly can't know, just like with a lot of things, you don't truly know your MMR, you don't truly know somebody is cheating, you truly, well, if they're hard hacking, yes. But you don't always know somebody's cheating. You can't prove that people are a 4-man Swift on comms. Like, there's a lot of stuff in DBD that you can't prove. And one of these things is the the reason somebody DCs. You can't prove why somebody's DCing. Unless that person is a Twitch streamer, you go into their Twitch stream and see that clearly they're fine. Their kid got into something. Their dog got into the trash. They forgot that they had a prior engagement and they had to leave suddenly. There have been matches I've DC'd from because I had a build request and I didn't put on the build correctly. I was like, oh crap, I don't want to upset somebody that you know paid for a build, so I'll just hop out real quick, right? There's plenty of good reasons to DC from a match that aren't like necessarily people being a baby, but that's just always the first assumption. And since you can't prove it, it's one of those things that it's just kind of like word of mouth and assumption. And you know what they say about assuming? Makes an ass out of you and me, so yeah. Let's see what Choy has to say about it.
He finds itself ensnared in a heated debate surrounding the potential removal of the DC penalty from the game. One faction contends that eliminating DC penalties would lead survivors to casually abandon matches at the slightest inconvenience, thereby...
I do want to point out as well that Dead by Daylight has not always had a DC penalty. The game didn't have a DC penalty for quite some time, and the game didn't fall apart or anything. So, take with that what you will.
Transforming the game into an unintended PvE scenario with killers left to contend solely against AI opponents. While the opposing side makes the argument that the DC penalty is actually making the game worse because survivors will just give up on hook or even go AFK if they truly don't want to play a match, bypassing the DC penalty altogether, which is much more destructive than simply having a bot replace them. Now, if we look at both of these arguments logically, they both make sense, making this one of the most difficult problems to solve in DBD.
Yeah, because you can't say that like a bot will perform at the same efficiency that a player will. Some don't. Some players are just really, really bad. But like a player usually, like a bot will usually not play at the same efficiency that a player would, like in terms of gen efficiency, in terms of looping, definitely in terms of looping, because bots either go from being like absolutely stupid, and they are stupid like 90% of the time, but if they get on like a long loop, they're just wall hacking you the whole time and then they get really annoying. It's better than having nothing. It's better than having nothing. So So I will take that definitely. But yeah, having a bot teammate is definitely kind of like still ultimately an L. You're definitely gonna be taking the L in that match for the most part, unless the DC happens like late in the game. Like if the DC happens at like 1 or 2 gens, it's still likely that you will win because most of the hard work and the heavy lifting has been done. But outside of that, yeah, DC bots are still not the greatest. So yeah, there's a semblance of like wanting people to stay in the game, and that makes sense. My route with that would be to be like improving the bot AI and not necessarily going for harsher punishments necessarily.
Really underscoring the complexity of the issue. Even if it might seem simple, the problem extends beyond service level considerations, necessitating a more nuanced examination of its roots. In the early years of DBD, the absence of a DC penalty allowed players to disconnect with alarming regularity. This era was plagued by short-sighted hatch mechanics that spawned even when multiple survivors remained alive, enticing disconnects to exploit loopholes in gameplay, meaning survivors would often DC if the match was not going their way, allowing up to 3 survivors to instantly escape through the hatch if they had brought a key, turning what was most likely going to be a win for the killer.
We used to tunnel people with keys.
In a completely
not weird here in 2024.
Even up until
we used to tunnel people with keys for this reason.
To the game, survivors would still DC to give that last survivor on their team a better chance to get hatch. I think because of this, killers have grown a pretty fierce animosity towards survivors who DC, and have become very defensive of the DC penalty. That said, DCing survivors used to screw over their teammates as well, so it wasn't completely a killer issue, but killers did get the brunt of it. Now moving on, when Behavior did finally add the DC penalty to the game, it drastically lowered the amount of players DCing overall. There is no denying that. Unfortunately, this also increased the amount of players giving up on Hook, and it also allowed cheaters to hold content.
Which I will say this too, is that no matter how you feel about like the DC bots in terms of how good they are, it is better than having nobody. Having somebody give up on Hook and just having no one. That is objectively a better scenario to have at least a body there, at least something there. So we don't want the opposite. We don't want this other situation happening. I said to the game while we do the pre-drop. I'm sorry.
Occasionally
it do be the new packing plan, unfortunately.
So the DC penalty did come with pros and cons. Now, more recently, DC replacement bots were added to the game to take over for survivors that disconnected. At first, it seemed like players were actually DCing more often, but this was usually because they wanted to spectate their bot rather than play the match themselves. It became a trend pretty quickly to do this, and Behavior had to step in to remove the ability to spectate a match after DCing to stop players and content creators from doing it. However, once survivors could no longer spectate their bots, something really interesting happened, which is the amount of survivors rage quitting declined quite significantly. Empirically speaking here, I don't think there's any official DC statistics from Behavior, but it has been very noticeable. So why are survivors DCing much less than they were before bots were added? Well, that's due to a more insidious motivation behind DCs to begin with, which is the desire to spite the killer or teammates. With replacement bots rendering traditional spite tactics ineffective, entitled survivors now must resort to alternative disruptive behaviors such as hastening their demise on the hook, intentionally engaging with the killer, or even adopting a passive AFK stance. Again, the intention behind the rage quit is to ruin the match. These rage quitters do not want to give the killer any points. They want to punish them for whatever it is they're upset about. Maybe they hate the specific killer, maybe they hate the killer's playstyle, or maybe they hate their own team, or maybe they hate themselves. That's why with replacement bots being
that's a therapy job, not a you job.
They can no longer spite the match in the way they want to, because the bot is never going to give up. It's going to give the killer points and probably play better than the person who DC'd anyway. This is where the argument to remove the DC penalty is really growing from, because survivors who care prefer to have a bot rather than a player soft DCing in some way.
Better than nobody.
It really truly is.
3v1 with 3v1s, which I'm sure you still end up in that situation a lot when a killer decides to tunnel somebody out at 4 or 5 gens. 3v1s are incredibly difficult to win. And in a lot of situations, especially in solo queue, it's almost outright impossible to win a 3v1. Like the amount of snowball pressure a killer gets out of just having a survivor just out of the match entirely is just overwhelmingly strong. So even if it's just a body to sit on a gen or to take aggro for the killer. Like, that's absolutely better than nothing. Absolutely better than nothing. Because it removes that 3v1 scenario.
Is a valid argument. That said, killers have been down this road before, and we all see what PTB matches are like. Survivors disconnect constantly for almost an endless...
Yeah, and Cassie, there's also a lot of reasons outside of just like enjoyment of specific killers as well that it boils into. That's extremely understandable. Like certain phobias, like with plague with vomiting, clown with fear clowns. Like, there's plenty of actual reasons to not play against certain characters too. Like Amanda Zera, who used to play DBD all the time, fairly big and long-standing DBD content creator, literally had that phobia and like could not play against Plague and would just have to stand there. Would just have to go AFK instead of dealing with that. Because they literally couldn't do it. They literally can't face Plague. Because they just have that. So they just got to suffer. Now all the super, you know, raise the DC penalty Endies would be like, yeah, just deal with it. That's your problem. I don't think it's necessarily nice.
Amount of reasons. One big reason they disconnect though is when another survivor DCs. Why play a full game with a bot on your team when you can just insta DC and go to the next match for a better experience? And they'll say there's no harm in it because if the killer doesn't want to play against bots, they can just disconnect as well. But my concern here is that this entire idea of basically scrubbing matches because someone leaves at the start will eventually cascade into making DBD a lobby simulator similar to the current situation going on with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Players on both sides will have things they don't like. Map offerings, black wards, certain killers, etc. So they'll just
the motion
leave
sickness
as
clowns
soon
the
as
thing
the
too,
game
yeah.
starts. This entitled mindset will
100%.
just consume the game over time. Even players who don't normally DC will start to be annoyed that if they have to deal with everyone else's BS, why shouldn't they start abandoning matches they don't want to play as well? So understandably, the devs do not want to encourage that thinking in the player base. This de-evolution into a culture of abandoning undesirable matches poses a substantial risk to the overall future of DBD.
This is a thing in like games in general, and matches, and this is a thing in games in general. This isn't just a DVD thing. Is the question of like, what do I do about people just wanting to leave matches? Because the thing is, like, it's gonna happen. Like people are going to DC out of matches. It is going to happen. It is going to be a thing. People have suggested really, really big and really, really harsh like DC penalties, but DBD is not that serious of a game to require that. A lot of people point to stuff like Siege, like, you know, I have a lot of experience in, and other FPS games, and like, well, you know, the more you DC, you know, you could get like a DC count out for like an hour where you can't queue back again for an hour, and that gets progressively worse and worse and worse. But those games, those are for like ranked modes and like soft ranked modes. DBD is not that serious of a game, so to have that serious of a penalty on a game that's essentially horror freeze tag is like really, really intense and really, really out of place. Very, very out of place.
As evidenced by TCM. Now, I know from experience there's already someone in the comments typing out an argument about how if survivors are DCing against a certain killer consistently, then maybe that means there's an issue with that killer and not the players disconnecting. So here
you vote with your wallet. That's essentially what that is. Just like in real life with like business, you vote with your wallet. Like if you, I'm sure you've seen, if you guys live in the States, I'm sure you've seen the situation where you go to a street corner and there's one gas station to the left and then immediately another gas station to the right, which are in direct competition to each other. If one gas station has better prices than the other one, I'm going to that one. Let's say the right gas station has super low gas prices. I'm going to go to that one more often. I'm voting with my wallet. I'm not trying to be mean to the left gas station, and I'm not trying to hurt the health of gas stations in general. I vote with my wallet. This place has better quality in terms of its prices, so I'm going there. Kind of like that. People vote with their wallet in here. If a character is just like super uninteractive and super unfun, you vote with your wallet. You vote with your time. Your time is just as much a currency as anything else. Patsy's rating. Feel that sea. Oh me. Thank you so much for the raid. How's Debbie Delight? I think what Choy's saying is if you remove it, people will not even play half the games. be waiting longer to play in queue than playing in game. That's a big assumption. Like, I was thinking the whole time while you were saying that is like, dude, people are going to be leaving in mass, and then it's going to be like this, and then it's going to be like that, and it's going to be catastrophic. I don't think I've ever felt the things he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, personally, I don't feel like I have felt that. I know he's talking about, like, hypothetical, but I don't think I've had a DC, a bot, like, you know, somebody DC at 5 gens and be like, well, it's time for me to DC too, because I'm not a child. I'm not an emotional baby. I'm like, okay, let's get our points. Let's make the most of this, right? I think that's a good idea, Bridget. I feel it's a good compromise, right? Like, remove the DC penalty, but like have some sort of like detection system for people doing it on the constant. And then it kicks in, and then it's like, you. That's a problem, right? People who give up immediately on hook, the loophole, I mean, repel. Yeah, and that's why I've always said, Stinky, that like, I feel like there should be some sort of system to detect somebody that gave up on hook, and like, you know, create a bot that way. We're trying to figure out something with that. I know that's complicated because usually the question is like, how would you do that? And I'm like, well, we can think tank about that. I'm not gonna spend the whole video think tanking about it right here. But having some sort of like system to detect intentional like giving up on hook, that way we can just spawn a bot.
Is my counter argument to that. Maybe you're right. Maybe there is a chess merchant type killer that is horribly designed to play against, but even in that extreme scenario, players protesting by DCing in waves isn't going to do anything that simply voicing your feedback to the devs wouldn't already do. In fact,
yeah, it does. It 100% does. It 100% does. You go to like multiple streams, multiple different DBD social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and you see people DCing a lot against a specific character or talking a lot about how much the specific character sucks, and they just leave games every time they're facing that character. Yeah, that if I'm a dev, I'm gonna look at that and I'm gonna be like, bro, what is happening? Yeah, people DCing a Mass against Skull Merchant and Sadako led to the reworks of the characters, but like it's not raising awareness because it's not like a formal campaign or anything, but people's collective disdain that they were very loud about voicing is how those characters got changed and why those characters got changed. And part of that is like abstaining and refusing to participate. So I don't know. I don't agree with this take.
offering genuine constructive criticism to the devs will be infinitely more productive. Beyond that, don't forget that just because for you the chess merchant is worth disconnecting against, other survivors will all have their own perception on what a completely unfair killer is. Maybe for them it's Wesker or Trapper, or for a killer maybe it's a map they don't like, which all circles back around to turning the game into a lobby simulator. So disabling the DC penalty would be helpful in some situations for sure.
The Onryo was confirmed. One of the devs said they monitored the amount of DCs for Onryo and it made him sad. Really? So that one is confirmed. So what Choy is saying is just objectively wrong. The devs actually do pay attention to DCs, and it did lead to a character getting changed. Interesting.
Sure, but it would be catastrophic for the game in the long run. The player base just has too many entitled players for that to be a valid solution, even with replacement bots. That said, I disagree with the notion that DC penalties should be made more severe. This is a common request that a lot of players and even notable DBD content creators have requested.
The way you were talking so far, I was like, please don't say we need to make DC penalties longer, please.
Problem with increasing the punishment for rage quitters is that it will barely have any actual impact on players who rage quit. Instead, they'll just give up on hook more than they already do. The only people that would suffer from an increased DC penalty are players being held hostage by cheaters or anyone who gets disconnected due to knockout or server problems that are out of their control. Out performance and stuff like that. Unfortunately leaves the issue of people giving up on hook or finding another way to soft DC from a match. The devs recently spoke about this in a response to a thread about removing the ability to self-unhook altogether, saying that it's not so much that it's impossible to do something like this, but rather that this would not fix the problem, just shift it. If someone has decided that they absolutely do not care to continue the match, there is nothing we can do to change that. No amount of penalties or preventative measures will suddenly make them want to keep playing. And
we've brought this up in every video that's talked about this with like the social contract of gaming and all that stuff, which I think is just really funny that you're quoting John Locke with horror freeze tag in the virtual world. It's just like what you were invoking to try and get people to listen to you is like way above and way more serious than what we're talking about here. Maybe I've just become super chill in my older age, right? Where I'm just kind of like, I'm just vibing, I'm just living, I'm just trying to be as level-headed as possible. I'm not entitled to other people's time. I just don't care. It's an infinitely repeating video game. It is an ASIM that I can just requeue. I just don't care. Like, if you leave, whatever. Sure, I might in the moment be like, bro, we weren't even in any danger of losing. Why'd you give up? I might be a little huffy in the moment, but like, I don't let it carry with me to the next game. Because like I said, I can't prove that they're rage quitting because they're mad. I can just make assumptions, right? Who knows? Maybe their kid's crying. Maybe they forgot there was food in the oven. Maybe their alarm went off and they have to go to their job. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with them. And honestly, even if they do just want to DC because they're having a bad time, like, not really my business. You do whatever, man. You do whatever. I do not care. I know that's a really weird take, and every time I make one of these videos, people are like, I can't believe that doesn't make you seethe and freak out and get angry. But oh man, life's short. It's fun to get angry and pissed over stupid shit. It's just kind of like not my thing anymore. You want to leave? Whatever. You do you, man. It's just a game. It's just a game at the end of the day. The stakes are not high. If this was like a ranked mode, oh, you best believe I'd be pissed. If my skill-based matchmaking thing actually mattered, like it mattered for like, you know, rankings, for showing that off on stream, for like bragging rights, like you best believe I'd be up here be like DC penalty, 1 hour DC penalty. Like I'd be up here fighting for you. But like it's just a casual horror hide and seek tag. You know, it's like the stakes are not that high. The stakes are extremely low. The stakes are blood points. And generally just my mood playing the game, which are at the end of the day not high stakes. They're not very crazy, like things like I super worry about. So I don't know, I just don't care. I just don't. Can't force gamers to spend time in a game they actively dislike. No, the John Locke, the social contract. The social contract, okay?
I actually disagree with this. It's not that he's wrong, it's just that removing the ability to unhook yourself in stage 1 would have mitigating impact. When we are talking about people disconnecting, it's always valid to reduce the ease of it. Take for instance the impulse rage quit. A rage quit where something incredibly frustrating happens, which makes the player immediately quit from the game as a response without really even thinking about it. In DBD, rage quitting is insanely easy. It takes 3 inputs and about half a second to quit out of a match. Now in the past, I recommended that Behavior implement a feature where if someone wants to DC from a game, they have to hold down the button for 10 seconds to leave it, with the penalty for doing so being displayed on the screen. Now, some people will say that that's trivial and it wouldn't actually do anything,
any little bit helps.
Guarantee
any little bit helps.
You would see a difference with a lot.
Yeah, any little bit helps. Yeah, that would definitely work. People are telling you wrong about that. They're wrong. Heck them.
Less impulse DCs taking
place. So let's
continue on.
People just have all kinds of fake rules.
Even if we prevent them from trying to unhook themselves, nothing stops them from running directly to the killer to get downed and rehooked as quickly as possible, or from whipping out their phone and watching some videos as they wait for the match to finish. Either way,
he's starting to feel like Twins, where he's just like broken every patch.
Again, he's not wrong here, but there's always ways to mitigate survivors giving up. So just throwing your hands in the air and pretty much saying, "Oh well, there's no difference in the outcome, so why bother trying?" And that is just not the mindset that is required to try to tackle and fix this issue. How many times have you attempted to unhook a teammate who is trying to give up on hook and you save them right as they go to second stage? Now this pissy survivor who was trying to give up is even more pissy because they're death hooked now. Often this will make them run to the killer or AFK like he said. But if you manage to actually unhook them before they hit second stage, a lot of the time they'll continue playing the match.
Yeah, but the problem with like running into the killer, yes, I can kind of see. Going AFK, like, once again, you can make the assumption they're going AFK because they're being pissy, but also, like, I've gone AFK in games before. You guys have watched me, like, something smells like it's burning in my house, and I don't know what it's coming from, and I have to leap out of my chair and go see what's going on. I've had to do that before. I was AFK. You want me banned, guys? You gotta think about this stuff. Do you want me banned for that one time I was trying to make sure my house wasn't burning down? Because I went AFK for that. Okay, I'm about to say, assuming we removed the penalty. Okay, I was like, that was the part I was missing. That was the part I was missing. Remove the DC.
So again, these
I would just
problems
obviously just
can
DC.
and should be mitigated as much.
I thought you were
as
saying
possible.
just like,
All right, now let's
yeah,
finish
going
what they
AFK should
said.
just be
You've
bannable.
Still got
I'm
a
like,
teammate who isn't doing
period.
anything.
I'm like,
Only now other survivors might accidentally waste time saving them, and the killer has an easy way to activate whatever hook-based perks they may be running. In reality, people letting themselves die on the hook
nice that
is
they
not
left you on the ground and
problem.
hook you.
It's a symptom
They're
of
trying
the
to give you time to come back.
Fixing a symptom does not make the issue go away. It just resurfaces in a different way. That is going AFK, running at the killer, etc. The real problem is they don't feel the need to finish the match. That doesn't mean it's impossible though. There are likely some creative ways to discourage abandoning a match, but it's not as simple as disabling the ability to unhook yourself. So with that said, what are some creative ways to help solve this problem and make it more manageable? I think the best bet is to adopt the carrot and stick line of thinking where bad behavior continues to be punished, but good behavior is also rewarded, which is something DBD is sorely missing. So here are my ideas to help solve the problem. Create more safeguards for detecting unintentional internet or server-based disconnects.
Yes, this is what you guys were talking about.
For disconnected players to rejoin the match. Consider temporary restrictions on certain in-game privileges, such as blood point gains, rather than an outright timed ban. Gradually.
I feel like certain people don't care about blood points, but like, yeah, I can get down with that idea. Like, hey, you're playing, but it's not worth anything.
Escalating penalties for repeat offenders, taking into account the frequency and intent behind the disconnects. Introduce rewards for players who remain committed to a match, discouraging premature exits. This can include bonus blood points or other in-game incentives. Create a system that recognizes and rewards players who contribute positively to the team to encourage cooperative gameplay. This is something I feel SBMM took away from the game. Also, a system like this could allow survivors to endorse each other if they were a good teammate, allowing the matchmaking system.
There is an endorse in this game. It does literally nothing. There is a thumbs up option in the end game screen, and it does absolutely jack all nothing. It is literally like, it does absolutely zero, absolutely nothing. It might as well not be there. Big old nothing burger of a function. They got to make that do something. They gotta make the upvote do something. Holy moly.
To prioritize players who consistently exhibit positive sportsmanship, encouraging a more enjoyable gaming experience for like-minded players. Alternatively, there could be a new option to flag players who constantly engage in gameplay sabotage, like giving up on hook that pairs them.
But then you would get people like mass flagging content creators, and you would also have like people being like me. Like I was getting heckled a lot today for tunneling too much. And I was like, well, you were like 2 or 1 gens. I gotta kill the survivor, dude. like would I just get like mass reported for that, or mass like, you know, we're doing this reputation system thing. Would I get like mass reported for that? And they get penalized? You gotta worry about stuff like that. What should it do? Grant like more blood points, or give like a little blood point buff, like essentially like. You can run like body party streamers without having to run body party streamers or something like that. Or give you like a special item or something. Or like, you know, like a little, you can do a lot with that. We have avatars, banners. We've always had charms. There's a lot you can do. A lot you can give people just for being nice if you get like enough upvotes or something like that.
With like-minded entitled salt lords. Nothing permanent. The idea is for it to last long enough to where it still remains useful, but discourages the energy of exploiting false reports. Additionally, creating a party up feature at the end of matches that would allow solo survivors who had a good experience with their teammates to group up with them and continue playing together.
I don't know why DB doesn't have that.
Since crossplay was added, it's much more difficult to find friends, so this would be an incredibly useful feature that would drastically reduce rage quitting. Lastly, and this one is extremely important, allow players to slowly earn good karma by not disconnecting for extended periods of time. Meaning that when they do disconnect, the game can give them a pass for showing good sportsmanship in the past. It's
because I DC like once a month. It's usually because, like I said, I I go to do some of these build requests and I forget something, like the perk's in the wrong slot, I forgot an offering or something. Or I'm just like, okay, this person has stuck me on the ground for like 3 minutes. I would rather just, and it's like a Friday where I'm doing the open lobby. I'm like, okay, I'd just rather get the next group in. I'd rather get the next group of the open lobby in. So I'm just gonna ollie on out of here. Like I've never DC'd maliciously. That's just not something I do. The last time I like rage quit or left a game because I was mad was like 2020, which is 4 years ago at this point, which is kind of scary to think about. I remember that game very, very vividly. It was Ormond Doctor, and it was Old Ormond too, which was miserable. Old Ormond was terrifying. I was just kind of like, okay, there's just nothing I can do. I quit.
Silly that someone can DC every day and only face a 40-second ban each time, and someone who DCs once a month faces the same exact consequences. Sometimes players legitimately need to DC for one reason or another. Sometimes their game crashes, maybe they have an accessibility issue, or they're playing against a cheater. Basically, if you are a healthy player in the community overall, I do think it's okay for you to earn a little leeway when it comes to DCing. Also,
I did DC once. It wasn't out of anger. I DC'd because once, I think last month, because somebody was asking me to do like a Billy build request, and we got like a 4-man shadow step on RPD, and I was like, homie, I want your build to get value. Not just for people to just like disappear to the other side of RPD and the match should take like 10 years. That, if you count that, yes, that was the last time that happened. I forgot about that.
Popular content creators who are frequently harassed by cheaters could receive larger amounts.
If you were back and watch that game, would you agree with yourself there's nothing you can do?
Discourage cheaters from.
Yes and no. There's probably stuff I could have done better, but also Old Ormond was literally like the most abysmal map in the video game. Like probably one of the strongest existing maps that behavior is made. So yeah.
Advertising on them. Hopefully, these proposed solutions would help strike a balance between discouraging intentional disconnects and fostering a more positive experience for all DVD players. That said, now I
didn't want to like a 20-minute game.
Did I single-handedly solve
20-30-minute game with people just hiding, healing, while trying to get some of these build requests?
Uncontrollable urge to hit the like button, or do you have better ideas?
If it was just me, I would just
let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and have a good one.
I don't know. Like, as per usual with Choy things, I feel like some things are a little doom and gloom. The accusation that like people are just going to start DCing en masse when people DC early out of matches and create DC bots at like 4 or 5 gens, I haven't really seen that. So I'm not sure how they came to that conclusion that that is something that's on the horizon. That's like a big like doom and gloom apocalypse coming to Dead by Daylight. I'm very, very happy and surprised, but happily surprised, relieved that homie does not want to increase DC penalties, because the way the first part of this video was going, it made it kind of seem that way. So I'm glad homie understands that like making DC penalties harsher is only going to punish people who DC for reasonable reasons and not the people who are just already giving up on Hook to just get out of the game as much as possible. Could be an anecdotal thing. Well, that's not even like, what do you mean? Because he's saying like, this is coming. Like, this is a forecast. This is a forecast he says is like, this is going to happen and it's on the horizon. This is a forecast he has made. And I don't have any evidence of what I have experienced since bots have come into the game, both from watching my stream or like other people's streams, even social media in general, that would incline to me that like there's a mass approaching wave of DCs of people leaving games if somebody DCs early. People DC when they feel like it probably doesn't stop them. There's loopholes, yeah, like people dying on Hook and stuff. I feel like the death on Hook thing should definitely be like the focus, like preventing the I give up on Hook thing, or like we were talking about getting rid of like malicious, like running straight at the killer or intentionally going AFK, stuff like that. Like that's kind of like where the focus should be. The DC penalty is kind of like just like the band-aid fix for this problem. It's not people should be able to leave the game whenever they want. That's the problem. It's people that are being babies and leaving it for nefarious reasons are the problem. We should be cool with people just kind of leaving the game when they want. It's just like people shouldn't be using it as like a I'm going to punish the team. I'm going to punish my killer and kind of like make people who make a habit out of it to use it maliciously. Those are the people we need to worry about. I also completely disagree with this, like especially considering the fact that what Cassie said, where it's like behavior literally did take into account the amount of times people DC against Onryo is the reason that they started reworking her. They're just not correct that DCing as a way to like kind of be like, hey, this character is not great or this map's not great, doesn't matter. It's something that people shouldn't do because clearly it works. Clearly it is a way to let behavior know what's happening. And the idea is like, well, give them constructive criticism. It's like, brother, they're not everybody who plays DBD is a game dev. I would be very hard pressed to say that perhaps most people that play DBD aren't game devs. That doesn't mean that you can't correctly identify like, hey, this feels bad. I don't enjoy facing this. Something about this sucks. But you don't necessarily have the tools in your toolkit just as a person to be like, okay, well, what would be better here? What would feel not bad? How do we fix this problem? People say that a lot of time in real life too. A good example is like, you don't have to be a doctor to know you're sick. If you're coughing, you're hacking up a lung, your nose is runny, you don't have to be a doctor or know how to like, you don't have to be a doctor to figure out, oh, hey, I'm sick. And I wouldn't say, well, okay, well, like if it's really bad, if it's flu, brother, you should have just been able to give constructive criticism. You should have been much more constructive about how you got sick. You should have just went to medical school to know how to treat yourself. Like nobody would do that. Nobody would say that. Nobody would say that, right? But like we do that with like mostly with like non-AAA companies that make video games. We're like, bruh, why, if you don't have a concrete solution on how to fix this, you just shouldn't complain. It's like, that's not my job. That's not my role here. That's not what I do. I feel like DVD players just kind of like continue to misunderstand the fact that like behavior is a company that wants to make money. So ergo, if they want to make money, they should appease as many people as possible. So as many people invest time and money into their product so they can profit from it. They're not our friends. They're not our pals. They're not our buds. It is not up to me to take care of their woes. I am a consumer, so I can tell them I'm unhappy with your business. And I can vote, like we were talking about earlier, we can vote on being unhappy with that business however way we please. It's not up to us to fix their business. It's not up to fix their business. Can you imagine that you go out into real life and that's a thing? Like you go to a restaurant, right? And you go like, the number 9 chicken sandwich, it tastes like shit. It's terrible. And instead of them going, all right, well, we'll look into that. They just go, well, how would you cook it, huh? you imagine like a company's like a company's public rep just be like, well, how the fuck would you cook it, huh? Like that would never fly, right? That would never ever fly, not even remotely. But like people expect DVD players to do that for behavior, and it's the weirdest thing, and I don't know where that comes from. Well, how would you cook it, dude? Like I don't know, it just tastes bad. I don't know if it's like the sauce you use, is it the recipe of the chicken? Like, I don't know, the number 9 just tastes bad. Like, I don't know what's wrong with it, it just doesn't taste good. Unless you provide me a recipe, you shouldn't complain. Just like, they would get laughed out of the building. I was actually watching a Kitchen Nightmares episode that was like that. Really old guy and is like really like, it was like his wife's dream to own a bakery and he was just like loaded, so he just let her do it with like $1 million. And that's what they do. Like anytime anybody had to complain at that restaurant, it was just like, well, how would you make it better? Well, that's not, you just don't know what you're talking about. It's just like, oh, well, no, it's no wonder you don't have good business, huh? No heckin' wonder. But that's just not how that works. So I just find it just tickles me that like that Amy's Baking Company, yes! That's what it was! Chaz knows the exact episode. I forgot what it was called, but yeah, it's Amy's Baking Company. That episode is golden. It's hilarious. It's like, hey, if you didn't know how to make it, you try. Like, the old guy who said that to one dude at one point, he's like, well, you try it. Apparently that's just what we expect out of DVD players. I don't know, I just always find that really funny. I am relieved. Get round back, back it up, all the way back to the video. I am happy that Homie does not believe in making DC penalties worse. I like a lot of their solutions. I like a lot of their solutions to kind of like reward good behavior and kind of like focus more on mitigating like the continual offenders and not like people that do see every once in a while. I like that. There are a lot of good ideas there, and I feel like at least with this stuff in specific, they should probably take some of these ideas and actually implement them in the game. So.